It's Drive Time with Holly. Business and consumer news you can trust. I mean, what else are you going to do sitting in traffic?
And yes, it is another edition of Drive Time with Holly. And of course, I'm Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And today we are going to talk about something that I'm just going to assume the majority, if not all of our audience right now, has had to deal with in some capacity in their life, especially in Central Florida.
Right, whether once or 15 times, whether you're like you and you drive it till the wheels fall off, or you're like me and you change. you
so
change.
I'm not quite like that.
So we're going to talk about the theme for tonight is automotive, buying, selling, trading in, and then later in the show we're going to talk about the Florida lemon law. But yeah, we were talking about before the show started that, you know, there are just naturally people who drive it till the wheels fall off, or
my dad. He might be listening, but he's kind of a mechanic, and he will literally drive it until the wheels fall off.
It's a badge of honor to see just how many miles you can squeeze out of that vehicle.
Yes.
Or you could be like me, and you have tried one of each make of car, and you change cars every time you need new tires. So dealers love me.
Tires flat time to get a new car.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I need an oil change, new car. So I think it's a generation thing. I think that I have accepted that I will always have a car payment. But there are people who their goal in life is to pay that car off and ride as long as you can without a payment.
You know, that's very interesting, because that's kind of how I look at it. It's kind of like another payment that you just accept that it's going to be there. When I recently paid off my car, though, it was kind of nice not having that payment for a little while. So it's a little bit of an inner struggle with me. But I think this is a topic that is definitely going to interest our listeners, because a lot of them are either in their car right now. Most of them are probably in their car right now. But in Central Florida especially, you really need a car.
Yeah, this is definitely a driving city. It's a driving area. For us to drive 30 minutes anywhere we need to be is just kind of accepted. It's the norm. Over Thanksgiving, I was visiting family, and we would get everywhere in 5 to 10 minutes. And I commented, well, that didn't take long. And then I realized this is normal for them. They're not used to having to drive very far. But here in Central Florida, it's not uncommon for us to be in our cars for, hours a day. My commute sometimes can be an hour in and an hour back out. So for me, I spend a lot of time in my car, and
so when you go and purchase a car, it's a very important purchase.
Deal.
It's a big deal to your life.
Yeah, it's a big purchase. You spend a lot of time there, and for a lot of people, it's a little piece of your identity.
That is very true.
Yeah.
When you get a car, it has to almost represent you,
fit your personality.
Yeah, in some way. So we have a couple of experts in the studio right now who are going to talk about this. We want to talk, like you said, a couple of different subjects.
Yeah.
What you do when you're buying a car. So we want you to be an expert shopper today. So if you're thinking about going to get a new car, you're going to be ready today.
I think this is the time of year. I think we're also lucky to have these gentlemen joining us, because I know this is the end of the month, and back at their offices, back at their dealerships, they've got people who are really working double time to get everything accomplished the end of the year, the end of the month. So we appreciate them joining us.
Yes, and even though they work for two different dealerships, they're getting along very well. So that's
they speak the same language.
Exactly right. So we're talking with Shane Lillibridge, who is the customer relations manager at Headquarter Hyundai. Sorry about that, Headquarter Hyundai. And we're talking with Mike Albrecht, who is the general manager of Corey Fairbanks Mazda. So how are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Excellent.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we before the show started, what we determined was not only do they speak the same language, but in this business, these guys and gals, they come in when it's dark and they go home when it's dark.
Yeah, long days you guys have.
Very long days. Very long days. We've I get there at about 7:45 in the morning and leave around 8, 9 o'clock at night.
So is there any rhyme or reason as to what time of day you can expect to be busy?
Typically in the morning, our service department becomes busy. A lot of people come on in the morning, and those people do come over into the sales side of it while they're waiting on their cars to get done in the service department. And then typically after work is when we get a lot of people come in.
And weekends.
We're busy all the time during the weekends.
So if you decide that you want to be a general manager of a car dealership, you better kiss your weekends goodbye. For the most part.
Kiss most of your weekends and most of your weeks, yes.
Yeah, because weekends...
So your life?
Right. Kiss your families.
There must be a benefit somewhere, yeah. But I would imagine that most people who are working during the week, the weekend is the time that they're going to come to kick tires and shop around. So to your point, it makes sense that people are having service during the week and maybe car shopping on the weekends. But like you said, after work, people may be stopping by the lot to take a look around. So,
So I mean, you must love your job, so if you're willing to put up with that. I mean, does it go by pretty fast during the day? It probably depends how busy it is, I guess.
It definitely flies by.
Really?
There's not enough hours in the day when it comes to the car business because you want to sell as many cars as you can and you want to talk to as many people as you can. So
sure.
it fly by. You get there early in the morning, and by the time you get done with your first cup of coffee, it's noon already.
Yeah, you walk into a dealership. I know when I go to have my vehicle serviced, you can kind of observe the dealership, both the sales side and the service department, and it's just like a beehive of activity. Everyone's moving and doing their thing, and so it appears anyway that there's something to be done at all times because, like you said, if you're there for service and you're like me and that new car smell lures you in, and it seems like more and more dealerships are putting the service department's waiting area near the
showroom.
The showroom, right?
Yeah, I noticed that.
And they've got the windows and doors open so that there's that new car smell wafting out. So there are people like me who are, we can't help, but I'll just go look. And it's like new cars and puppies. You don't go look unless you're ready to take one home.
It just looks, that new car looks nice.
So
I'm going to get my car worked on, but it looks really nice over there.
Yeah.
This is kind of a random question. We're going to get into specifics on, what we should do when we're going to buy a car, what kind of research we should do. One question I always had, though, I don't know if you guys have the answer. Some of these dealerships are open pretty late, late into sometimes like 10 o'clock at night. Do you actually get a bunch of people that shop like at night that will go in at like 9 p.m. at night and say, I want to buy a car?
Absolutely. It's something that you see a little bit more with, the families.
Really?
You've got the mom and dad who both work, and they can't get the babysitter till 6 o'clock at night. They go out to dinner, and then they want to come and look at cars. And, we don't leave until they're done. And so 9, 10, 11, we've had some late nights.
That's very interesting. I know it's kind of random, but I just always wondered that. I'm like, do they really get customers that late?
I bought a Jeep Wrangler the night before Thanksgiving quite a few years ago, and I walked out with those keys, and it was close to 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and it was the night before Thanksgiving.
You're one of those people.
I'm
huh?
one of.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They still remember you.
Right. So yeah, it happens, and yeah, you're right. I was one of those. It was an impulse purchase, obviously. It sounded like a lot of fun, and so I went in at the last minute, and I kept them there late.
Jeep Wrangler.
Now I feel bad.
I'm trying to picture you in a Wrangler. That's cool.
Soft top, take the windows out, take the top down. It's a skill everyone should have. It was a phase. I loved it, but it's not really family. It's not as family friendly as
you go mudding in it. But
I never did. That paint job meant too much to me, and that's how I knew it was time to get rid of it. When I was more worried about the tires, the wheels, and the paint job.
I see. So let's get into a little bit on some specifics here that will help our listeners who might be thinking about purchasing a car. What kind of research should they do before they walk into that dealership? Do you suggest that they kind of do their homework, or does it even really matter?
I believe absolutely they should do their homework. An educated consumer makes the entire process a lot quicker and a lot easier. We've got professional salespeople that will take the time to go over every angle of the vehicle. But if the consumer comes in and they know what they're looking for, they know what they want, it makes the process quicker, easier, and overall better experience.
What tends to what life events tends to bring someone in to buy a car? Do you see that are people coming in? I'm sure for a variety of reasons, but do you see that people come in? Are there life events that trigger someone to come buy a car, or is it when the wheels fall off, or like me when it's time for new tires? Do you see like a predictable pattern to when consumers come in to buy cars?
I think that the majority of people just have a cycle that they do buy cars, and in the United States, it's typically about 27 months. They come in and purchase a new vehicle, but you do get that where someone does have a baby, where they have to get a larger vehicle, fit baby seats and child seats. So life events do. A lot of times when people move and they move into the area, a lot of people like to get a new house, get a new car, and basically start over. So you see a lot of those people also.
When someone, I know it's kind of another random question, but when someone is one of those people who has to get a bigger car because they like a baby, I feel like there's not as many minivans out there as there used to be. Is everyone getting SUVs now? Is that what's happening? Or
yeah, it swung from the minivan. There was a huge minivan craze at one point, but that did move over to the SUVs. Now,
so that's something you really notice when you're selling.
You see it. You see not a lot of people buying them because there's not really a whole lot of manufacturers that a lot of them have cut back on making the minivans.
Well, and I think too because I know because again I had a minivan. I've had one of everything.
I mean, my mom had one. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a minivan when my son was very young because little babies come with lots of stuff. And I loved it. There was tons of room. There was tons of space. It was easy to get in and out of. But I will tell you that I did not go to that dealership looking for a minivan because I did not want a minivan. And so I think there's this whole like,
there's a stigma.
I'm not going to drive a minivan.
But they're so practical.
So practical. And for people too with mobility issues, I know that a lot of times a minivan is easy to get in and out of. But yes, there's that minivan stigma, and so I think it's much more palatable to think about an SUV.
So we're going to get more into this. We're going to make you expert shoppers. If you're wanting to buy maybe a new or a used car, we're going to talk about when is the right time to do that. Should you get new? Should you get used? A lot of things to discuss. So you are listening to Drive Time with Holly. I'm Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Drive Time with Holly. Business and consumer news you can trust.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Drive Time with Holly. I'm Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And today we are talking about that big car purchase that most of us have to make a few times in our lives, some more than others. Yeah,
we don't really live in an area where public transit is really an option for us, though a lot of people have given, the Sunrail a go, but you still got to get there. So
yeah, it doesn't work quite as well as it does in like New York City or something like that.
Right. We're not for the most part depending on the bus system. So, most of us have a vehicle or two in our lives. And I think it's a transaction that most of our listeners are familiar with.
Yeah, so what we did is we brought in a couple of experts who work for different car dealers. We have Mike Albrecht, who is with Corey Fairbanks Mazda, and Shane Lillibridge, who is with Headquarter Hyundai. And so we're bringing them back on and asking them some questions about
the process.
The process.
Yeah. So, Mike, do people want to haggle?
Yes.
They do.
They do. They say that they don't, but if you get them in, or if they come on into your dealership and you give them a great price, they want a little bit more just to push them over the edge.
Right. So I know that there are those dealers who give this is the price, this is the price, this is the price. We're not going up, we're not going down. The price is what you see. And I would imagine that because for so many generations we've been used to haggling and, there's really is some wiggle room. I can imagine that, even for those dealerships, they have to spend a lot of time saying, no, really, we're not haggling here. Because I think it is kind of, that's what we're raised to do. That's how we know that transaction to be.
I have worked in one of those dealerships that is one price, and you're absolutely right. Even though they know they're coming into a place that is one price, they still want to negotiate. So it's ingrained in us that we got to get that little bit better deal than my neighbor next door.
Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting because like you said, people say that they want to just walk in and have an easy transaction, and walk in and walk out. But well, if you can't move on the price, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And I can't imagine what it would be like to be one of those salespeople who has to,
I guess they're used to it. I guess they're professionals.
Patience is a virtue, and it's obviously something that you practice, and it's a skill that once you've perfected it, makes you a commodity, I'm sure.
Right. So Shane, here's a question for you that I know a lot of our listeners are really interested in. Is it better to buy a new car or a used car? I think a lot of people debate this in their minds. And, I would guess it kind of depends on your situation.
It does. It depends on their personal situation when they come to the dealership. As a new car dealership, I would always say it's better to buy a new car. But I have beautiful used cars too. So it's going to be what best fits their needs. And so just asking some basic questions, finding out what they're really looking for, I think that makes it an easier process.
What question comes first? What's your price point? What's your budget, or what are your needs? Where do you start that conversation?
Well, it's wants, interests, and needs. What are you looking for? The car you're bringing, what do you like about it? What do you want to keep? What wouldn't you mind getting rid of? And it ultimately it does come down to budget, what they're looking for. If we can save them, $5,000 on a car that's 2 years older, that fits all of their needs, well, that's where we're going to push them.
Well, and I'm sure for some people, it's not of utmost importance to be the first owner, to have the new car smell. Some people like the idea that purchasing used, that you don't have that, you don't have that drop in value. You feel like someone else has already taken that. So I think some people would only consider buying a used car. So, to your point, while you have certainly, lots of beautiful new cars, you have used cars as well that you're happy to put people into.
Absolutely. And, Hyundai itself has got the certified pre-owned program, and their CPO vehicles, when you're buying a used Hyundai and it's a CPO, you have the remainder of Hyundai's warranty. And so you still have the 5-year 60 and the 10-year 100. And that also comes with, 10 years unlimited mileage for roadside assistance. And so you're getting peace of mind when you're purchasing the used vehicle.
Right, with that.
I think he's selling you one right now, it sounds like.
I think these gentlemen do this so well and do it so many hours a week that they're always selling. Because even during the breaks, I think it's like, okay, there are how many people in the room and how many cars. How can I close you today? Well, let's talk about that.
It's a talent.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, car salespeople have gotten a bad rap over the years, and the profession maybe hasn't always gotten the respect that it deserves. Where did that come from?
Back in the 80s, early 90s, there wasn't the big internet presence that there is right now, and there weren't as many regulations, the bank regulations, and you couldn't go out there and look at invoices on vehicles. You didn't have the KBBs and to figure out what a used car was worth. So basically, you were at the mercy of the car dealerships. You were at the mercy of the salesperson that's in front of you.
Yeah, couldn't do your own homework.
Couldn't do your homework. There wasn't anything out there. You couldn't go to an encyclopedia or something and figure out what a car is worth. And then the banking. They didn't limit the car dealerships like they do now on how much money they can make on the vehicles. So, back then it was, you went in and you opened up your checkbook and that gave this a bad rap. And there were certain other things with leasing. Leasing back in the day was not they had leases that were trouble at that time, and now they've regulated that also.
Well, and two, I would imagine that if you are able to do your homework now, you're able to ask questions, you're able to watch review videos and all of these things before you ever get to the lot. Whereas back in the day, you had to trust the salesperson to give you all your information. Mm-hmm. And with customer reviews and with reputation management, certainly if you're a high pressure dealership or you have a couple of bad eggs on your in your dealership on your property, the word gets out. And so I would imagine, and I know that Better Business Bureau certainly hears from consumers, and it's important to us how accredited businesses and how businesses treat their customers. But as soon as you start cutting corners on customer service, not fulfilling promises, the word gets out. So I would imagine that, back in the day, you could be the fast talking sales guy, and
they could get away with it.
They could get away with it, yeah. But
can't do that anymore.
No, word spreads.
Now, do you find that a lot of people do the research before they go into the dealership? Now, like before they go to buy a car, are they usually checking the Kelley Blue Book price and everything?
Absolutely. I think you got to think that 80 to 90% of the people out there are definitely looking online before they come out. At least, you'd probably say 100% of them are coming out. So, for sure,
they're not walking in cold.
No.
Yeah. So let's ask another. Yaffe's asked a couple of questions that he felt were silly. Here's my silly question. I've traded in a lot of cars in my day. Before I trade in my vehicle, before I take it back for the lease inspection, depending on my situation, I always get it detailed. Does that really make a hill of beans a difference?
Not really.
I'm wasting so much money.
No. If you're turning in a lease, it means almost zero to the dealership you're turning it into, because you're turning that vehicle into the manufacturer. You're not turning it into that dealership.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, once you've had your inspection done, the dealership that you're turning it into has an option to purchase it. But
it's not their inventory.
It's not theirs. It sits in the back till somebody comes and picks it up on a truck.
But if you are trading and it's not a lease, a value is a value on a car.
Mm-hmm.
But that appraiser that goes out there will realize, this person, if they're taking care of this car on the outside,
right.
I bet you they've done all their oil changes and have taken care of it. So I would say, there is a little bit of
that it makes a difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we have found out a lot of information to make you an expert buyer if you were thinking about buying that new or used car. In the next segment, we're going to talk with someone who's an expert on lemon loss here in Florida. So we'll get into that and make you even more of an expert consumer when it comes to buying a new or used car. You are listening to Drive Time with Holly. I'm Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And we will be right back.
Welcome back to Drive Time with Holly. Business and consumer news you can trust.
Yes, and welcome back. It is another edition of Drive Time with Holly. I'm Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And today we have been talking about cars. And, it's an exciting topic, especially
selling,
for me.
Trading in.
Yeah, we found out that Holly does that once a month, apparently.
More frequently than I should, but I'm a dealership's dream, and I like variety. And these gentlemen who are joining us in studio have told me that I'm not alone. So there's drive it till the wheels fall off, and then there's me.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of people out there like you. I'm giving you a little bit of a hard time, but I definitely understand it. So now though, we're going to focus on a different angle in terms of when you buy a car, and that has to do with lemon loss.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't really understand it. Most of us have never had to become an expert in lemon law, thank goodness. But if you have had a lemon in your life, you certainly become an expert very quickly, I'm sure. So, I think it helps to have someone that you can ask questions, get the real deal, because when you find yourself in this situation, you certainly want to make sure that you have the right answers. Yes,
so we have an expert who's going to make you an expert if you're listening right now in terms of lemon laws. We are talking with Todd Eikenberry, who is a manager of the Better Business Bureau Auto Line program here in Florida. So Todd, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thanks for joining us. So we're going to jump right into it because I have a long list of questions. This is a program that Better Business Bureau offers to its community that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. Here in the state of Florida, Better Business Bureau Auto Line program handles a lot of lemon law cases. Todd, talk a little bit about, do Floridians have to use BBB's Auto Line program for lemon law cases? What determines who does and who doesn't come to BBB for this?
No, that's a good question. Probably the best thing to do is to check in the back of your owner's manual to see which alternative dispute program that the manufacturer utilizes. The Auto Line does cover a lot of manufacturers, but not all. There are other agencies, and some agencies, our program is certified, so a person that has a complaint with one of the manufacturers we cover would have to file with us first prior to going through the lemon law. But not all manufacturers are certified, so some people can go directly to the lemon law process, which is housed through the Attorney General's office. So your owner's manual is the first place to check, find out which avenue you need to take. And also, if you're not sure, contacting the Attorney General's office in Florida, they can certainly direct you to the right agency. So,
are there a lot of consumers who contact either Better Business Bureau or I'm sure the AG's office who are contacting us much too prematurely?
Well, people file at all different stages. The lemon law sets out some pretty basic guidelines to tell consumers when enough is enough. If you're having a problem with the vehicle, the basic guidelines are that you should have under your belt already 3 repairs for the same problem.
So that's not, sorry, Todd, that's not 3 repairs to one vehicle. That's 3 repairs, 1 problem.
3 repairs for one particular problem.
Right.
That's considered substantial.
Mm-hmm.
So, the lemon law, defines a problem as something that substantially impairs your use, the value, or the safety. It doesn't have to be all 3, but one of those areas needs to be affected substantially. So 3 repairs, or if your car is out of service for 15 or more days for any number of problems, at that point in time, you would want to put the manufacturer on notice that you are out there having these problems and request what's termed a final repair attempt. The lemon law publishes a booklet, which I believe they're still putting into new cars. When you purchase a new car, they should put in your glove box this booklet. That does a really, really good job explaining the lemon law, the ins and outs. It's short, and it does a great job. In the back of that booklet is a form that you would fill out and send in to the manufacturer. There's instructions. And once the factory gets that, then there are guidelines that they have to follow towards getting that customer in for that final repair to hopefully resolve it. Because up to that point, you've pretty much just dealt with the dealership. The lemon law, involves the manufacturer, so you want to give them one final attempt to fix your vehicle.
And how important is documentation? I know,
very.
Yeah, I know as CEO of Better Business Bureau here in Central Florida, I know we locally hear from consumers who come through the Auto Line program who may say, well, I've been to the dealership several times for this same problem. They took a look at it. They said they couldn't replicate it. They sent me on my way, but I didn't get a receipt. I didn't get any sort of documentation. How important is documentation in this process? It's
very important. Yes. I mean, most people, and I hear it day in and day out, I never thought I'd have a problem, so I wasn't really paying attention to my documentation. The dealer should always give you a work order when you leave, whether they've made an adjustment or not, to document that you were there with whatever complaint you had. Make sure everything's noted. All your complaints are noted on the document. If for some reason you don't get those documents, usually the dealer can print out a repair history for you as well. So they'll usually have something in the computer where you may not have a work order. They would have record of it. So
are
very important.
Are the requirements different by state? Is it different in Florida than, say, Georgia or something?
All states have lemon laws, and yes, each lemon law, and I do work with some other states, lemon laws have their differences. For instance, a lot of people don't understand. Well, some states will cover used vehicles where the Florida lemon law doesn't cover a used vehicle. So it's for vehicles purchased new. They can be demonstrator models. Or if the vehicle's transferred from an individual to an individual, if you were to transfer your vehicle to a relative or what have you, that relative could still be eligible for lemon law. But when you buy a vehicle and it's logged as a used vehicle, it's technically not eligible in Florida. But
so the arbitrators who are seeing or hearing these auto line cases and hearing these lemon law cases, who do they work for? Do they work for BBB? Let's talk about that.
They are all independent parties. They're not associated with the manufacturer. Most of our arbitrators have a legal background and have been trained. They do go through a training process to help them understand the ins and outs of the lemon law and arbitration procedures. So they become certified through Better Business Bureau. And but to answer your question, no, they're from, they come into us. They're not here permanent staff. They're not employed by the Better Business Bureau. So.
And who pays for the process, Todd?
The manufacturers do fund the process, but it's all one big lump fund that is distributed then to the BBBs for
managing those cases.
Managing the cases, yes, exactly. Yeah.
And from the time of purchase to the time, let's say I purchase a new car, I have, problem after problem with this one particular car. Mm-hmm. From the time of purchase to the time that I have a lemon law arbitration or I go through this process, what's that estimated time frame?
We have from the date a person contacts us, and that would mean by way of going online and filing a claim, there's a 40-day window in which we have to assist that consumer. The first step is to work with the manufacturer towards attempting to mediate the case. Most cases are mediated and resolved without the need to go on to the next step, which is arbitration. But we have 40 days to complete mediation and arbitration and get that consumer a decision if it goes to arbitration. So, yeah.
So we are
Not
talking.
a long time.
So we are talking with Todd Eichenberry, who is with the Better Business Bureau Auto Line program here in Florida, talking about lemon laws. We're going to expand on this more in the next segment and also talk about any other questions we have about buying a car.
Yeah.
So you are listening to Drive Time with Holly. I'm Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And we will be right back.
Let's be better consumers. You're listening to Drive Time with Holly. Holly.
Yes, this is Drive Time with Holly. I'm Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And we are making you better consumers today, specifically dealing when you purchase a new or used car.
That's
and
right.
What can happen after you purchase a new or used car. Amazingly enough, Holly did not purchase a new car during the break.
I didn't know.
So, I think she was tempted.
Yeah, then again, my driver's license and all the necessary paperwork is in my purse. And,
I see.
Yeah.
So probably right after the show. She had mentioned earlier that she's one of those people that will buy, like every 2 years or something like that.
Oh, at least, yeah.
At least,
well,
also.
Okay, 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
But, Mike said earlier how
27 months.
27 months. Those are my people.
That's about 2 years.
Those are my people.
Yeah, you're pretty normal.
Thank you. Can I get that in writing? Yeah. So we're joined still on the phone by Todd Eichenberry with BBB's Auto Line program. Todd, thanks for sticking around. I have a couple of more questions.
Sure.
So are the findings of these Auto Line proceedings, are they public?
They are not public. We treat each case individually and maintain privacy for the individual consumer as well as the manufacturer. There are statistics out there as to, as I mentioned earlier, the cases that come into the program, how many are resolved via mediation versus going to arbitration and whatnot. So there are some stats out there about that, but we don't publish
the specific
outcomes or what the car is and what the complaints were and so on and so forth. No.
Right. So if your vehicle is deemed a lemon and if that vehicle is bought back or replaced, what happens to the vehicle when it leaves your possession and it goes back to the manufacturer? Can they resell that car?
I was just actually reading on the Attorney General's website about that. My understanding is if it goes through an arbitration process, whether it be here, through the state, whatever program, and it's deemed a lemon via the lemon law, the title has to be branded on that vehicle. So moving forward, I believe that they can be resold, but the next purchaser has to be made aware, and paper has to accompany that vehicle going forward that it went through a lemon law process. Now, do manufacturers resell vehicles? To my knowledge, I don't think, especially if it's a safety issue and whatnot, they're not going to want to put that back out there again. So, but if they do, paperwork has to accompany it.
Right. There has to be disclosure. So
there has to be disclosure, yes.
If that vehicle is bought back or replaced, if it's repaired, it's turned around and sold to the public, would that disclosure, where should I look for that? Should I look for that in a...
My understanding is the title has to be branded.
Okay.
So somewhere, and I don't know because I haven't seen how Carfax reports, but I don't know if it would show on a Carfax or not. I don't know that I can answer that question 100%. I just read that the title needs to be branded.
And will I get my purchase price back out of that car?
The lemon law in Florida, basically, without going into all details, gives you everything you paid for the vehicle up front. Tax, tag, title, dealer fees, all of what you paid up front, in addition to any interest that you've paid on your loan throughout the life of the loan, gap insurance, extended warranties, basically everything. There is a deduction for usage based on the mileage at the time the case goes to arbitration. There is a formula that tabulates that, and so there is a deduction for usage. But that usage deduction typically is not as much as the market deduction.
Well, and one thing that and Todd, we appreciate you joining us. One thing we want to remind consumers is, consumers, buyers who go through this process are a small percentage of the total cars obviously sold or on the road. And we want to remind consumers that if you have a problem, if you're experiencing issues with your vehicle, go to the dealership, work with your dealership. This certainly, this process is not meant to be used as a weapon against the automotive industry. There are very clear steps in this process. There are very clear steps and checks and balances that you have to clear in order to even be eligible to participate in this program. So communicate with your dealership, work with them. They want happy customers. I know that Mike and Shane will both agree that the happier their drivers are, the happier their customers are, the more repeat business they have, the more word of mouth. Certainly as accredited businesses, it's important that they maintain that relationship and rapport and the high level of customer service. They don't want you to be upset, and they don't want you certainly to go through this process. They want you driving a car that you love.
Yeah, and that's actually a great question for you guys. Shane, if someone has an issue with their car, what's the process dealing with? Can they just go back to the dealership and talk about? What do you encourage them to do?
Absolutely. It's all about communication. If there's an issue, the sooner we know, the sooner we can get it fixed and repaired. And so it goes to the salesperson who sells the car. That's always the first contact for the customer whenever they have an issue. And the salesperson takes it upon themselves. They said, okay, let's get you into service. Let's get that taken care of. It very rarely escalates. Generally they're small issues, but it's all about the customer always comes first.
Right. And, Mike, you are a seller right now, so you probably had to deal with this sometimes in your past.
Holly hit it right on the head. We don't want unhappy customers. We want the last result or the last thing to be the lemon law. It is good for us because, these cars, they're machines. They're not perfect. And we're not the manufacturer. We don't build them. We kind of get caught in the middle, but you're our customer, and we want to take care of you. So that's the last resort. There are things like RAVs, and there's things that the manufacturer we can do on our end where we can go to the manufacturer and say, hey, can we get some trade assistance? Can we help get this person out of this car? We'll take on the responsibility of that car, but can you help us get them out of it? So we just want a happy customer.
Right, and that was our goal on today's show, that you can be a smart customer, an informed customer,
better equipped,
and eventually a happy customer. So, and if you missed any of the show, or if you had more questions, so we have some resources on our social media that will help them out, right, Holly?
Right, so you can go to drivetimeholly.com, and after the show, we will post resources. We'll post basically follow-up information on almost every point that we hit. We will post there so that you can follow up on that. And then you can also find previous shows there and listen back to maybe some shows you missed.
Right. And we've talked about a bunch of different things to make you a smart consumer in the past couple of months. So if you really want to be a smarter consumer, especially here in the state of Florida, whether it's dealing with cars or dealing with other subjects, check out our past shows. Check out our podcast and share them with your friends.
It's 1 hour a week that, if you're going to be in the car, you might as well use your time wisely.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of cars, so you have been listening to Drive Time with Holly. We'll see if Holly will post another picture of a new car within this week on our social media that she.
This one still smells new, so I'm good for a while.
Yeah, and I want to thank our guests Mike and Shane. Appreciate you guys joining us today and helping out our listeners.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.
So I am Yaffe.
And I'm Holly.
And we will catch you guys next week.